In this topic, what we are going to learn and understand is how to set up task relationships, how to sequence the activities that you have created in your Microsoft project file till now. So I'm using the same exercise file which we created in the earlier topic. So wherein we created the tasks along with their respective durations. So I'll now do the sequencing. Now sequencing basically means that in which logical order you want to perform or you can perform the activities or the tasks. Now, when it comes to logical sequencing, I can have activities which are running purely in a sequential mode, that is, one activity finishes and then the other one starts, or I can have activities which can run parallelly. So, that is what I can do when I am setting up the task or the activity relationships. So, if I again I would again request everyone to go through certain project management concepts, books, or trainings through which they can understand what are the various task relationships and when they can use which one, so that they ideally understand what are the various intricacies and impacts of having different types of task relationship, and as a project manager how you can come out with the most optimized and realistic schedule. So yes, broadly I'll just cover the topic. When I talk about task relationships, there can be one default one, basic one, which we commonly use, and that is called a finish to start relationship. Finish to start relationship basically means that once I complete a predecessor, which is the master activity, then only I can start the successor, which is a dependent activity. Like let's say example, I dig a hole, then only I can plant a tree. I cannot plant a tree without digging a hole. That is pure finish to start relationship. Then I can have activities which are having start to start relationship, which means the predecessor and successor starts on the same day, or else it means that predecessor starts and then only the successor can start, maybe on the same day or after some days, but successor cannot start until the predecessor starts. So for example, let's say I'm working in a construction of road project wherein I have two activities to perform, and the activity is I have to dig a stretch of a road and then I have to lay the foundation. So what typically many project managers could do is like in a finish to start mode, like once I complete digging the entire stretch, then only I start laying the foundations. That is pure finish to start. But if I want to optimize time and make better utilization of time, what I can do, I can run these activities parallelly. Like I started digging the road, and after a certain percentage like 20 or 30% of digging that stretch is complete, I can start laying the foundations or the stones. So this way I can have activities running parallelly, having start to start relationship. So this way I can save time, I can ensure that my multiple activities are running parallelly, and I finish the project much quicker rather than doing it in a finish to start mode. Then I can have activities in a finish to finish relationship. Finish to finish typically means that the predecessor has to finish, then only the successor can finish. Now the successor can finish on the same day or after certain days. Let's say I have activities like testing and documentation of the test results. Now they can run parallelly, but documentation can only finish once the entire testing is complete. And in fact, documentation might take 1 or 2 days more to finish compared to the testing, because I might have to compile the reports in the proper format in which my other stakeholders might need it. So testing and documentation can again have a finish to finish relationship. Then the fourth type of relationship that might exist between activities is called a start to finish activities. Though rarely used, but there is, like I have to start the predecessor, then only I can finish the successor. So start of the master activity drives the finish of the dependent activity. So for example, whenever shift changes, whenever the night guard comes, then only the day guard can finish his job. The day guard cannot finish his job until the night guard comes and takes handover of his respective duties and files and so on. So these are the types of relationship that we have when we are talking about task relationship, or the order in which we can do the activities. Now question is, how do you set up these task relationships in Microsoft project? Now there are multiple ways of setting the task relationship. Now these are the tasks that I have. I can assign relationship between the subtask to subtask, or I can assign relationship between summary task to summary task. Ideally you should do between subtask to subtask and leave the summary task as is. Let the summary task move on its own. So if I have these activities, I need to decide the logical order in which I need to do it. So decide the predecessor, successor, and the respective relationship between them. So in Microsoft Project, again, it's very easy how to set up task relationship. Like if I select a task and the task for which I need to select a predecessor, so I can double click that task. As soon as I double click define scope, so the task information box opens in front of me. Therein I go to the predecessors tab. I have various tabs like general, predecessor, resources, advanced, nodes, custom fields. I go to the predecessors tab, and then under the predecessor section I can select from the drop down all the list of activities which are created in my MPP file will come in front of me. I can decide whichever is my predecessor. So let's say collect requirements is the predecessor which has to be completed, then only I can start the define scope process. Then type of relationship, by default it will always take finish to start relationship, so I can decide other relationships also. And there is a concept of lead or line which we'll touch upon later. So let's say I decided that it means collect requirements has to finish, then only define scope can start, and click OK. So as soon as I did it, you see the activities are now linked and it is being showed by an arrow. And if you see the dates of also the activities have changed, the start and finish dates have changed of define scope. So if I see define scope now has moved to 17th from 11th earlier, and the finish date has moved to 21st. So whatever changes have been made in the MPP file are highlighted in the blue color, just to show you that these are the impacts of relating these two activities in a finish to start mode. So this is one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is using the Gantt chart column itself. I don't have to go to task information box. So let's say create WBS can only start once the define scope process is finished. So I'll go to create WBS, and then I scroll to the right, and there is a predecessors column. Therein I need to write the line number of my predecessor. Now from where do you find the line number? If you now see on the left hand side of each of these tasks, there are certain numbers written starting from 1 to 12. So for create WBS, the number assigned to it is 4, and for define scope the number assigned to it is 3. So if I go to create WBS, in this section I need to write the predecessor's line number, so I'll just write here as 3. So just writing the number again means finish to start relationship. So as soon as I click on this, it has taken finish to start as the relationship. So this is something how I can have these activities linked. So finish to start is easy. Now let's suppose I want to do a start to start or a finish to finish relationship. So let's suppose I go to the relationship called test and documentation. So testing and documentation can run parallelly, but documentation cannot finish until unless testing is complete. So, and in fact documentation might take 1 or 2 days extra to finish. So first let's see how to assign finish to finish relationship. So again I go to the predecessor activity or task. Documentation is the predecessor, test is the documentation is the successor, and test is the predecessor. So I need to go to the successor activity documentation, and then go to its predecessor column, and therein I need to type the number of the predecessor. So I'll just type 10 here, but here the relationship is finish to finish, so I can type here 10 FF. FF stands for finish to finish. So these two activities are now linked. Now if I see the activities, if you see, they are linked on a finish to finish mode, testing and documentation. So test is the predecessor of documentation. Whenever I need to assign a relationship, I will go to the successor activity and go to its respective predecessor column and type the line number of the predecessor here. So this is how you do finish to finish relationship. If I have to do start to start relationship, let's suppose testing and training, I want to run them parallelly, so that I want also training an activity which has to be finished on time. So training could be training on some generic project management concepts or some leadership skills or motivation skills. So I want my team to be ready with all those concepts, all those knowledge by the time the tool is also ready or the software is also ready. so I can run them parallelly. So test and training, I want to have them as start to start. As soon as test and starts, training also starts. So here I go to the successor's predecessor column and I type the line number, which is 10, and SS. So this is how I can assign relationship to activities. So again, what type of logical order should exist between the activities is all the project manager and his team to decide. So here I'm just giving you a few examples. It doesn't mean that you do a project this way, that testing and training has to be with a start to start relationship, or testing and documentation has to have a finish to finish relationship. The objective here is to understand how you can use Microsoft project to define different types of relationship. The objective here is not to learn how to execute your project, right? You are the experts in that, so you'd be the best judge how which logical order you should perform your activities. You can take inputs from experts always. So now this is how you define the relationship. So start to start, finish to finish. I can have multiple predecessors. Like let's say high level design can only start once my scope has been defined and create WBS both are complete. So I can have multiple predecessors here. So I'll just go to the predecessor section and type here line numbers as 3, 4, which means once both these activities are complete, then only this activity can start. So this is how you can have multiple predecessors to an activity. Now the next concept that you need to know while defining the relationship is the concept of lead and lag. Now let's suppose I am doing an activity, collect requirements and define scope. Right now it is pure sequential. That means once collect requirements are fully gathered, then only I start defining the scope. But let's suppose I want to do it in a mode that once 80% of my requirements are gathered, I should start with defining the scope rather than doing it in a full finish to start relationship. So what do? Basically I'm saying that once collect requirements is 80% finish, I start off with the defining of the scope activity. So I'm preponing the define scope process by 20%. This preponement, this advancement of the successor is called a lead time. So again I'll go to define scope. Now how do you add lead time in Microsoft project? I'll go to define scope process, go to the predecessor section. Means that it is to finish to start relationship, pure finish to start. So I need to add a lead time here. So to finish to start, I'll prepone it by 20%, so minus 20%. So now if you see the impact, this has been preponed by 20% and certain days are overlapping with the previous activity, which is collect requirements. So that means I have added a lead. Lead is also called negative lag because it is saving time from your project. So lead can be added to save time in your project. So this is how you can add lead. I added it in percentage. You can add it in days or hours, whichever way you want again. So not necessarily everything has to be in percentage, it can be in days also. So this is how you add lead. You can also do it from the task information box. Like if you double click the task information box opens, and then go to the predecessor section and in the lag part. But to add lead you should use a minus sign because it is also known as minus lag or negative lag. So this is how you add lead time. Lead time is the advancement of the successor. Now just opposite to this is a concept called lag. Lag means the wait time between the predecessor and successor. So let's suppose I have two activities, high level design and detailed design. But once high level design is approved, which will take 2 days for approval, then only I can start with the detailed designing. Let's assume that. So there has to be a gap of 2 days between high level design finish and detailed design start. So I go to 7, the successor activity, type here as 6 as the predecessor with a finish to start, but I need to add 2 days as the additional wait time that will be required for it to start. So this 2 days is called the lag time. So I'll just type here 6fs plus 2d. So as soon as I entered here 2d, if you see, it has taken a 2 days gap here. There's a lag of 2 days. This is the wait time. So this is how you add lag and lead in your project schedule. And lead is generally used to save time. Lag is generally adding time to your schedule. A few best practices of scheduling is that make sure all the activities are associated with its respective predecessor and successor. Only two activities will be open-ended. Open-ended means either it will not have a predecessor or a successor. The first activity of your project should not have a predecessor, and the last activity of your project will not have a successor. So first activity will not have a predecessor. That means it is the first activity of your project. It will not have any predecessor. And the last activity is when the project finishes. It will not be having any successor. So only two activities will be open-ended. Rest all activities should be defined having predecessors and successors, so that I can create a proper realistic schedule. Secondly, when you're typing a relationship, make sure you have appropriate type of relationship between the activities, rather than just doing it on the basis of your whims and fancies. Understand the dependencies between the activities and the way it is possible to do those activities, right? Add those appropriate relationships. You cannot have two types of relationship in activities, like you cannot have finish to start and also start to start. That will create an unrealistic schedule for you. So only one type of relationship can exist between predecessor and successor. You can have multiple predecessors or successors. Add appropriate lead to save time. Adjust the lag time wherever you can when you are creating a schedule. So these are some best practices you should keep in mind while defining the sequence of relationship. So now once you sequence all the activities, let me do the sequencing and see what we get. So let me assign all the relationships. So let's say analysis will start only after my detailed design is complete. So I'll just type here as 7 as the predecessor. So under development will, let's say, start only after analysis is complete. So I'll type here 8. Now development and testing can run parallelly. As a developer, you can also keep on doing testing. So I'll just add a start to start relationship, or I can do a finish to finish relationship also. Let me have start to start relationships. So development is let's say 9 start, but they are not start on the same day, because I want some of my modules to be developed, then only I can start developing. So let's say after 30% is complete, so start to start plus 30% as the lag time, the start to start, which means that it can start only after 30% of my development is done. Testing can start. Documentation has been given as 10FF. So documentation can start again, they might not finish on the same day. 10FF would be appropriate, so the documentation might take another 5 days to, let's say, compile and format the report. So 10FF plus 4 to 5 days I can enter. So this is how I created all the relationship. Now if you see, all activities are having respective predecessor and successors. Training is something, let's say I have 10 start to start. So training and testing, I have given it again 10 SS, so I can have some lag time here. 10 SS, so let's say lag time of 6 days. Okay, so this is how you define relationship and lag lead in your schedule. So now once this is done, now if you see, the summary task duration have changed, and the overall project duration also will be calculated here. Now how do you see the overall project duration? So what I'll do, I'll go to this format tab and click on a checkbox which is called project summary task, which shows my project. It is taking 68.2 days, so starting on 11 September and finishing on 14 December. So this is how they calculated the schedule based on the sequencing and the duration that I have entered in my file. Now how did they calculate 68.2 days? This is called the critical path method. Now again, how critical path method is calculated, there is a three-step process. Forward pass, wherein we calculate how early an activity can start and how early it can finish. Then backward pass, which calculates how late it can start, how late it can finish. And then we calculate float or slack, that means the duration by which an activity can be delayed without delaying the end date of the project. So again, critical path method, how it is done manually, you should know. It's not that you have to do it in your project manually, but once you understand the logic how calculation is being done, it helps you to understand that whether your schedule is realistic or not. So again, I would suggest you to go through some trainings or books wherein the critical path method and calculation is being taught. And now critical path basically is to identify what is my critical path. Critical path is the longest path of the project, the path which, if there is any delay on that path, I can slip my end date, like it is 14 December, I can miss that date if there is any delay on that path. So the software has already done the calculation for us. Now how do I see which one is my critical path? So in the format tab itself, if there is a checkbox, if you see critical task, just click on that checkbox. You see some of the tasks are denoted by red color. Now here almost everything is in red, only one activity is in blue. So the red ones are my critical path. That means any delay on this project path means the project end date will get late. So having all the activities in my critical path, which I have right now, only one activity is not a critical path, which is training. So having all the activities on a critical path means that my project is highly risky. That means all the activities are very critical. Having multiple critical paths also is dangerous in the project. So you need to, that's why I understand the logic, that now this is the first draft of the schedule. Now we need to identify whether there are ways we can save time and we can optimize the schedule properly. Here most of the things are in finish to start mode, only if you are in finish to finish or start to start. That's why we have almost all the activities in critical. So the red ones denote the critical path of your project. So how do you calculate critical path? Is the critical path method you should know before you start understanding why this is red and all. So you can go back to your conceptual part of the training, conceptual part of project management, wherein how to calculate critical path is being taught. So this is what we have. This is how you sequence the activities. The idea is again to tell you how to use Microsoft Project to sequence to add linear line. So now what I'll do is that we will upload an exercise in the next topic. We have learned how to create tasks, how to enter durations, how to create subtasks. So in the next topic, what we'll do a lab exercise wherein we will take up a project and we'll try to do all these things and come out with a realistic project schedule. So thank you.